Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Shadow and Sun Show, and welcome back for another Best of Dragon magazine. As you can see, I have Volume 3 right here in my hot little hands. Not one of my favorite issues, but definitely one I'm glad I have in my collection. This one is mostly devoted to the first section, which is called Finishing the Races, which is basically most of the material that would, I believe, either show up in the Deities and Demigods book or the Unearthed Arcana at some point. The different points of view of the various races, the dwarves, the elves, the halflings, the gnomes, and the orcs and half-orcs. The section covers what you'd expect the player characters to behave like, their points of view, their opinions, their general state of mind playing a dwarf or an orc or things such as. Then each of the corresponding sections also has a section on the gods of the various races, which if you're playing something like Mystara or Greyhawk, that's great. But you guys know me. I usually create my own pantheons for whatever world I'm running, and stray from what's written here and elsewhere. That's just the way I roll and run my games. The next section is Breathing Life into Dragons. The first one, which was that's not in the monster manual. It covers the neutral dragons, because in the monster manual you only have the good aligned and the evil dragons, and certainly there's room for dragons of neutral alignment. Arduin went into that in great detail, and they do not cross-pollinate. They're very, very different in makeup. The neutral dragons in AD&D were of a crystalline nature, which is interesting. Why not? Then the next article is called Hatching is Only the Beginning, to flesh out the younger dragons. I think it was a precursor to running dragon-like characters. Palladium would later take a hold of that as part of their canon. Not really a fan. Dragons are meant to be NPCs at best, adversaries most of the time, and I don't just it's just not my cup of tea. Self-defense for dragons. This was an article I made great use of going forward, giving dragons things like tail attacks and wing buffets and various other attacks and strategies, which, up until then, dragons were, even the 88 hit point, max hit point red dragon was really not much of a challenge for a seasoned group of, say, 9th to 10th level characters, just because the first round of combat, if the initiative went to the players, they're probably going to dish out 100 points of damage just between 4 to 6 characters. This gave the dragons a little more bite, pardon the pun. That being said, if your dragon gets the initiative and the breath weapon, that's gonna potentially take out some of the more important characters, being the clerics and the magic users, leaving the fighters to have a little bit more fair fight, in the dragon's favor, of course. The fairy dragon was the next article that I read, hated, and never used, because it's just another pseudo dragon for characters who want a pet dragon that's something they can sit on their shoulder and feel special. And I just thought it was not something I was going to promote in my game. Two tougher foes, two more dragons to add to the mix. And then evil dragons make good armor, which, of course, who doesn't want to walk around in black or red dragon armor, wearing the scales and horns and things like that, and how to go about it. Definitely used that in my campaigns. Players were always souvenir collectors to begin with, taking teeth, horns, fangs, feathers, that sort of thing. And when this article came out in the regular Dragon magazine, it became all the rage, and everyone wanted to, go adventuring in the finest of dungeon apparel. Playing with class, the thief, a special look, more ideas of how to run the thief that would eventually find its way into second edition, which I am a big fan of the second edition thief. One of the few things in second edition I do actually appreciate over the things that were taken out of second edition, and I'll go into that in a whole new episode later on this year. The druid and the DM definitely fleshed out the druid, which was, well, one of the most powerful classes in the game. Just ask Cal; he's a one-man, wrecking crew when it comes to dealing with the things I throw at the party. A new version of the monk. I did allow this one in my games. It was a nice change of pace from the less serious monk in the original Player's Handbook. Only surpassed by the monk in the Oriental Adventures book. For a more realistic monk, but I prefer to have stranger monk orders for my worlds that don't have to be so Asian. There's no reason why monkly orders wouldn't exist in the world that didn't have to be in the Orient or someplace like that. It just seemed really too tied to Earth mentality, and I always cite the characters, the king and his bodyguard from Beastmaster, the young boy. They were monks. None of them were Asian, and they did everything you'd expect a monk to do. They were hand-to-hand staff fighters, living a devout life of martial training. There's no reason why you can't have that and just leave out, the racial stereotypes, which I think are just small-minded and unrealistic. The next one, singing a new tune, a horrible bastardization of the original bard, which was the best bard of all time. Ask my current players; they're really enjoying that process of having to go from fighter to thief, then learning the druid lore. And little do they know they're so far on their way to doing that well, stay tuned. The cantrips, everybody loved them. They were a great idea, something that really should have been in the game from the get-go. First zero-level spells that did some fairly powerful things for their price of, I think it was a half or a quarter of a first-level spell. Absolutely, once you got past third or fourth level, holding on to 4 cantrips at all times. I might even do an article on that, because there were clearly 3 or 4 absolute musts for any magic user to always have on hand, that include like untie and unlock, so that the magic user or the party would never be tied up for long. Let's put it that way. Spell books, again, things that went into the Honored Arcana that were absolutely crucial pieces of information for the magic user players. The care and maintenance and additions to your personal spell book. The Achilles heel of the magic user, you take away the spell book, and suddenly they're a 14 hit point character that can't do much of anything else. Creating new challenges. This is where, and this is why I hang on to this volume. The 3 things I'm going to go over next are things that are absolutely crucial to most of my worlds, one exception, that being the first thing, the Winged Folk. I really enjoyed them. The only downside is their agoraphobia, I think it is, their fear of going into dungeons, or maybe that's the opposite. They're neither here nor there. A race of creatures that for the most part look human, but with more or less angelic wings that could do all the things you'd expect them to do, except go into dungeons. So if you're running a hex crawl, having a winged folk ranger or scout, invaluable. And playing one could be quite rewarding, provided you don't mind not going into the dungeons. But then again, you have a great character to keep an eye on the horses and the wagons and things like that. Maybe even a pair or trio of them would keep your gear quite safe and alert the party to any, possible dangers coming up on them, roving bands of orcs and things like that. Well, you got eyes in the sky, now you can better prepare yourself for that encounter. The next thing is the Alchemist, which, oh my gosh, there's so many great things that the Alchemist can help the party with, whether it be creating potions or research into new things, salves and elixirs and glues and solvents and things like that. Having an alchemist in your entourage, or having a good friend that's an alchemist in your favorite town, absolutely super beneficial to any adventuring party. The last thing was the archer, and for this alone, it's definitely worth the price of admission. The archer is a player character class, whether it be the archer or the archer ranger. Archer ranger, oh my gosh, if you want to play Robin Hood, this is it in a nutshell. Robin Hood was something like a 14th level Grand Archer Grand Master with just insane chances to hit and damage, starting right off, with a mere +1 to hit at point blank, and the chart goes on to include short, medium, and long ranges. At 14th level, having +7, +6, 5, and 3 respectively, hit and damage of those ranges made the bow and arrow suddenly a thing to be reckoned with. Although I do more or less prefer the Unearthed Arcanas, simplifying that for just about anybody and leaving it out of the hands of just a pure bow and arrow character. But I know some players who really enjoyed playing the archer and the archer ranger. Not a bad character class to add to your repertoire of potential characters that you'll allow the players to run. Decent experience point table, single eights. No, they do get the 2 dice for hit points, 2d8 at first level right off the bat. Who doesn't love that? 2d8, depending on how you run it, up to double the Constitution bonus. You could be looking at a 24 hit point character at first level, needing 2,500, 5,000, etc. experience points to go up a level. But that's what I have for you today. Definitely worth the price of admission. Definitely a magazine to keep and take care of. This one's in pretty decent shape. Nice cover. I'll be going into volume 4 next week. I have some more videos for you this week. It's actually going to be a rather busy week. I'm taking advantage of the impetus that I've acquired over the past month of recuperating from the holidays, and I'll be bringing you some more stuff. But this one, definitely worth it. Not my favorite. Probably number 2 or 3 in the list. I might even do a short tier video of why you might want to have 1 or all 5 of these in your collection. But this one, definitely worth having if you're, especially if you feel differently than I do about some of the things, the races and the different dragon issues and the other character classes. You might like their version of the monk or the bard. More additions to your cast of characters that will just give you a different end result when it comes to what the player composition was like, and that informs where they're going to go, what they're going to do, instead of the usual mix of fighter, clerics, thieves, and magic users. So, from all of us here at the Shadow and Sun Show, thanks for sticking around and playing along. I will see you guys tomorrow with another review. This time it will be Avengers' latest, one of Avengers' latest books. One I'm enjoying the heck out of it. I'm going to go now back to reading it. I hope you guys have a great day. Thanks for stopping by. I will talk to you guys real soon. And until then, happy trails.